Hello YouTube, this is Sadako24 here. Now, some months back I did do a video called Doctor Who 1980s, An Eccentric Decline, in which I covered kind of my thoughts and coverage of what I think went wrong with the show in the 1980s. Or at least some of what went wrong with the show in the 1980s, and this is kind of the purpose of this video. I am quite proud of that video, I must say. I think it's been one of my most successful videos. I think it's one of my best commentary videos. But rewatching it, I realised that I didn't really talk too much about the elephant in the room, if you know what I mean. The issue of the twin dilemma.
Well, Perry, what do you think?
It's terrible.
Oh, never mind about the clothes, they're easily changed. What about me?
I didn't really go into it as a major problem with the era. And I thought in this video I would actually do that. I would actually kind of go into it a bit more. Because I did say in the video that it was the worst first impression you could make with the Doctor. The Twin Dilemma was Colin Baker's first story as the Sixth Doctor. First full story. And it's a story in which the Doctor kind of emerges from the regeneration slightly unhinged and volatile and violent, and he has a particular mood swing which climaxes in him going berserk and strangling Perry, his companion.
You don't even know what a Peary is, do you, Perry?
No.
I'll tell you. A Peary is a good and beautiful fairy in Persian mythology. The interesting thing is, before it became good, it was evil. And that's what you are. Thoroughly evil.
Doctor, stop it!
No, not even a fairy, an alien spy. Sent here to spy on me. Well, we all know the fate of alien spies.
It's kind of it's kind of remembered for all the wrong reasons, if you know what I mean. It was certainly a divisive scene in fandom. And I thought I would kind of talk, I thought I should maybe give the story more kind of focus, more kind of exploration in terms of the legacy of the story. Because there are a lot of fans who feel if there was an identifiable jump the shark moment with Doctor Who, that was it. Now, personally, I think the jump the shark point was... Now, I mean, do I think that's where the show jumped the shark? I don't know. I think it was... I think the show jumped the shark earlier than that. I mean, I talked a lot about my problems with the Davison era. Tend to lean towards Time Flight as being the real Jump the Shark story. Yeah, I think Time Flight was the real Jump the Shark story. But let's talk about the Twin Dilemma today. Why is it the Jump the Shark story? Well, I mean, largely it comes down to the gulf of quality between the Caves of Androzani and Twin Dilemma. There is a sense that, if there was ever a kind of a good demarcation point for the show, Caves of Androzani was it. It was a great finish to the Davison era. It was a great story. It showed what Doctor Who was capable of being at that point. It was a rewarding finale. And then the Twin Dilemma comes along, and it's the worst way to follow that up imaginable. And, the drop in quality it was, like I said, it was a bit of a culture shock, I would say. And it was the gulfing quality between, gulfing kind of, the sharp contrast between, everything noble about Davison's Doctor and everything that was so vile and petty and nasty about the Sixth Doctor. The new Sixth Doctor was it was starkly there just what a horrible turn we just made with the show and with the character, it seems. Now, I query that view to a point. I mean, I think Davison was very, very noble in the case of Androzani, but I think that was an exception to the rule. I think in a lot of Davison's era, he was actually just a variation of Jodie's Doctor, just this unbearably sanctimonious, preachy incompetent who was a liability to his companions and everyone around him, really. And that's down to the writing. And I think Colin, of course, was a reaction to that. Of we've had a sanctimonious Doctor, now we're going to have this really kind of just absolutely openly, brazenly amoral Doctor who just doesn't care. He's just very arrogant and scoffs at human compassion and scoffs at his predecessor's compassion.
My dear child, what on earth are you complaining about? It's the most extraordinary improvement.
On what?
My last incarnation. I was never happy with that one.
Why ever not?
It had a sort of feckless charm.
So it's a quality jump off. Now, usually that's the excuse. Now, people who defend the Twin Dilemma, usually that's the excuse they make. They say, well, look, Twin Dilemma's good, it got judged unfairly because of what it followed on from. Now, personally for me, that doesn't factor into it. When I was rediscovering the show, I actually watched the Twin Dilemma first, before I watched Case of Androzani. Or more specifically, I watched part 1 of the Twin Dilemma first, before I watched Case of Androzani, because I got curious about the Twin Dilemma. If it was as bad as they say, what did they really do with this whole, Doctor gone berserk, strangling his companion kind of thing? I kind of wanted to see what they did with it, so I did borrow it from someone I knew at a fan group who lived quite close to me, actually. Just say, well, do you want this back? And it's like, it's shit, but yeah, I do want it back. It's a collectionist kind of thing. And I have to say, the first episode was just... I gave up after the first episode. And it was like... The main reason I gave up with it... because at the point I think I was intrigued at the idea of the Doctor... I mean, firstly, it was painfully stilted. The way it was directed, the way it was staged, it all seemed so painfully stilted. It was a very unpleasant viewing. There was no ebb and flow to it. It was stilted. And it's not so much the strangulation that bothered me. It's more... Well, it was the strangulation that bothered me, but it was more that... It was the... You could go one of two ways with the strangulation. Either the Doctor's very kind of apologetic and he's really kind of remorseful and he does his best to make amends. He has a very human reaction to it, a heartfelt reaction, and that's kind of an emotional hook in as the Doctor kind of realizes he's turned into something horrible. And they try to do that, but at the same time, he keeps on relapsing into just being really kind of mean-spirited and berating to her, what are you getting so upset about? You're exaggerating how bad it was. It just comes across like a really obscenely insensitive brute, really. That's just not the hero you remember. It's like he's not even a decent guy kind of thing. He's not even likable at all. And I think to a degree that's the problem. It's like, that's the problem I find with much of the era. The Doctor and Peri is like, Peri is the screaming damsel, but the Doctor's always telling her how pathetic she is for being the screaming damsel, and there's no sense of it's very like there are moments where the Doctor's protective of her, but it feels like the fear can't work if you feel like the show itself despises you for having the fear reaction to it. Or having the emotional reaction to it. It's almost like it feels like the story is just sneering at the viewer for, ostensibly because Peri is the viewer insert. She is the audience representation figure. And the Doctor's telling her how pathetic she is for reacting the way the audience tends to react. It just feels like a very, very kind of nasty, cold viewing. And it reaches its apex in the final minutes of part one, where they land in the middle of this spaceship battle, graveyard of ships that have been shot down.
This doctor is dangerous!
Of course it's dangerous! We could be blown to pieces at any minute!
But no one could have lived through this!
Then stay behind! This is work for heroes, not for faint-hearted girls!
And it's one of those things that if, for some reason Colin starts bickering with Perry, and it's one of those things. How did this even start? Is it even going to end? And it starts obviously because Perry kind of says, "I want to go back. I don't believe anyone could have survived this." And he kind of berates. They find a survivor, and he keeps berating her. Well, you said there was no survivors, and we found one.
So, no one could have lived through it, eh? Well, here's one who did. You would have left one of your own kind to die.
And you would have left him to die, and he was just being just absolutely petty, nasty. Just, it was unbearable. And then, it was like it was the limit. It was beyond the limit. And then, especially after she'd been terrified by him, and he's still acting like an arsehole.
Will he live?
Yes. Small thanks to you. Poor pusillanimous Perry. What a pitiful performance.
How can you be so pathetic?
And so Hugo, who they've rescued, comes round. He's been rescued, and they've not even bothered to disarm him. But immediately he makes the judgment that whoever's taken him and left him armed and taken him to safety must be the people who attacked him and tried to kill his people.
Look at you now.
What do you mean?
I never saw anyone who loved himself so much with less reason. You've forgotten all about him. By the time you start congratulating yourself, he'll probably be dead.
Perry!
Murderer! You destroyed my entire command. Now I'm going to kill you.
And so he suddenly comes round, he pulls his gun, but he's lying on the TARDIS floor, putting a gun up at the Doctor. And it's like, you're meant to be terrified that, he's going to take revenge, and it's like, this is so dirt stupid a motive for the guy to pull a gun on the Doctor. And all the Doctor has to do is kick him, and the cliffhanger's resolved. And there is that, I mean, I remember the Time Team, when they were reviewing the story, there was like, this guy's about to shoot the Doctor, and one says, just do it, I don't care, kill this new guy, he's an arsehole. I have no sympathy for the new Doctor. So that was the limit. It was kind of the limit. I said, you know what, taking this back, I've had enough. I don't even want to see what happens next. I don't want to persevere with this anymore. So, a lot of the discussion about Colin's Doctor comes down to, the fact that he proved he could be a great Doctor. He didn't get the chance to prove he could be a great Doctor. And on audio, he finally did. But it all kind of cements that bitter feeling of, well, why should he... the damage was done, and it needed to have been done. The damage was already done by Twin Dilemma. That was already a horrible first impression to leave the audience with. Why do it? What was the point? I suppose there's one other thing I should say about this quality drop-off. I did say, basically it is the epitome of what I meant when I said an eccentric decline. The 80s was an eccentric decline. And I think the Twin Dilemma was almost a kind of a confirmation of no hope. Almost. That in the past, the show's successes were built on. A great story like Genesis was about to come out. Next story was middling, but they kind of learned how to do really brilliant Doctor Who, and the next story was great as well. For a while, Terror of the Zygons Pyramids of Mars, Planet of Evil, Pyramids of Mars, Brain and Morbius, Seeds of Doom, the Deadly Assassin, Robots of Death, Tanzway Tank. It felt like the show was getting better and better at it. It felt like, the good stories had an impact that really kind of changed the direction of the show for the better. What it feels like, unfortunately, with the Case of Androzani Twin Dilemma kind of, being side by side, is it's almost the show outright saying, you know what, we can bring back the show's best writer, Robert Holmes. We can pair him with a great director, and he can pull out a great script with a great performance from Davison, and we can make the best Doctor Who story of the 1980s. And it's not going to make any difference because the next week it's just going to be back to being awful again. It's almost like even the makers of the show don't even care how good they got it and about keeping it good. Their kind of mission statement is almost to keep it just tacky and unpleasant. Or rather, they don't care about the baseline of quality. Like Case of Androzani, it happened, but it wasn't something they really aspired toward. And Twin Dilemma almost seems to exist as a kind of a scoffing at the aspirations of the Case of Androzani. So it almost feels like, what's the point even trying with the show? That's almost the feeling. And the whole thing of Twin Dilemma, it just feels like such a ridiculous own goal. It's like, why would you want to make the Doctor that unlikable and unpleasant and hard to warm to? Now, in terms of there are a lot of fans who feel, well, that was it. That was the beginning of the end. Now, the ratings figures don't really bear that out, it has to be said. Following season, there wasn't a noticeable ratings drop during the Twin Dilemma, which is odd. You would expect there would have been. The next season, Attack of the Cybermen, starts on a pretty high note. It dips out. There's a drop off between part 1 and part 2, but it showed people were still watching despite Colin Baker being the Doctor. So did he make that bad a first impression? It's hard to know, but I mean, my feeling is very squirrely. It's like, it's almost the instinctively you would think this would have turned people off. If it even turns, hardcore fans off, then it's like, if it didn't alienate the viewer, that feels like a miracle in itself. And it feels like viewers kept watching in spite of starting Colin's era like that, rather than because of it. That's kind of how it feels. I mean, what was the end game with the Twin Dilemma, really? Well, we know that Colin Baker, when he was cast, he was cast by John Nathan Turner, and John Nathan Turner had said that the reason he cast him was, I think, there was a particular wedding Colin Baker had been invited to. He'd already been in Arkham, Colin Baker played the part of Maxwell in Arkham Infinity. And then I think sometime after that, he just got an invite to a particular wedding, and he'd been quite an impressive kind of, speaker at the wedding. He'd been very kind of, very charismatic, party going type. And John Nathan Turner was so impressed, he thought, you know what, that's my new Doctor. And he always said to Colin, the way to play the Doctor, it's you at a party, it's you but up a notch kind of thing. You kind of turn up your kind of personality and charisma. So anyway, Colin was a fan of the show, and he was overjoyed. He'd always longed to play the Doctor. It was a long sought part for him. He'd been a fan for years. And to him, his golden age was the black and white years. He was a big fan of Hartnell, big fan of Troughton. He wanted to kind of get back a bit of Hartnell. He wanted to kind of go back a bit to when the Doctor was a bit of an untrustworthy anti-hero who could be a bit capricious and a bit alien. And he said that's what he wanted to do with his Doctor, and John Nathan Turner agreed with that and set Eric Seward to work. Was it a good idea? There was the inkling of a good idea there. But I think it had to be done right. It had to be done carefully and, like, if you do it to excess, then it becomes a problem. And it's like, the twin dilemma is them just doing it to excess. I think John Nathan Turner was keen on the idea of doing that strangulation scene, because and Colin went all the way with it. I mean, there actually are, funny enough, despite, a lot of people feel like, was that too shocking for kids? Well, the thing is, it was actually, that clip was shown on Blue Peter, as a kind of, this is what the new Doctor's going to be like. And it's like, so the idea was, this is going to be like, oh my God, this is what the new Doctor's going to be like. We've never seen this before. It was an attempt to do something different and shocking and sensational, kind of, almost raise expectations of something's going to go wrong with this Doctor. So tune in, if you know what I mean. It was definitely, there is a sense it was a bit of a rating stunt, a publicity stunt, a shock tactic, really. It was a bit on a bit of a cheap shock tactic, but it was kind of, let's go with it kind of thing. And that was, I think, John Nathan Turner's whole aim was, I want to get people paying attention to the show. I want people watching it. It was a very, I mean, you can tell it's a bit of a tabloid decision, tabloid development, really. And since we can't really do a sex scandal on Doctor Who, we can have a kind of violence scandal. It was that thing of, John Nathan Turner wants it to happen, so it happens. And I do feel that's the problem with the script, really. Like, Anthony Stevens was the writer, but he, for some reason, his typewriter just, I think he said something about his typewriter exploded while I was writing or something. But a lot of the script ended up being Eric Sayward's. He ended up rewriting it, but like, he was given the edict, make the Doctor kind of, a bit nastier. And when you watch the thing, you notice that there isn't really a reason for, like, the nastiness of this Doctor comes from nowhere. It's petty. It's just reactive in a very, very petty way. It's just, so Eric Sayward's kind of just writing. He's not writing from the heart. He's almost writing counterintuitively how to make this Doctor nastier and nastier, because that's what he's been dictated to do by John Nathan Turner. And he just makes him just a dick. It's like basically just watching, a full-grown Adric, basically. Now, my issues with the strangulation scene are multifold. I mean, a lot of people say, look, this is kind of making the Doctor too, like, it's too like actual real-life domestic violence situation, and you're kind of presenting the hero of the show as a domestic abuser. That's a problem. Problem also is it seems to define the entire Dr. Perry dynamic from then on as there's an uncomfortable air that the Doctor and Perry, the reason they stay together, no one's thought through, well, why would the Perry stay with the Doctor after something like that? And the only conclusion you can come to, the uncomfortable conclusion you can come to, is Stockholm Syndrome. And that's very, very kind of, very different thing from back in the day where, because Elizabeth Sladen once said that she felt, when she was thinking, what was it that kept her with the Doctor, traveling with the Doctor, despite the unpleasantries of the journey, the dangers, the ordeals they all went through together. She said it was kind of, she come to the conclusion, he was my best friend. I wanted to be with my best friend. And also, that's the kind of dynamic that works, but it has to be mingled with a sense of, the Doctor has to be someone you imagine a companion liking being around, kind of thing. And also, that's, to a degree, the Doctor has to be someone that you would trust your life in.
Come on, go.
I can't!
You must, we're nearly there.
Run for it, Joe!
Doctor, I'm stuck!
And that's why I think it worked in the 70s when you had John Pertwee as the Doctor. You always got the sense John Pertwee was, fiercely protective of the companion. And it worked with Tom Baker. You always got the sense he was the champ. He was the winner. You never doubted him, if you know what I mean. You never doubted him. With Davison, well, they went out of it. With Davison, you unfortunately did doubt him because he was too often defined by his failures and by his losses. Basically, a lot of his stories would end with a complete massacre he was unable to prevent, or in the case of Warriors of the Deep, unwilling to prevent. And I think that was kind of, it's that difficult thing of, well, how do you deal with the impact of Adric's death? Not just in terms of the bereavement for the companions, but are they still going to trust their lives in the Doctor after what happened to Adric? And that's never really dealt with, and I don't think a lot of the Davison era afterwards, I don't think really justified why they would continue to trust their lives in him, because I certainly wouldn't.
They're all dead,
But with Colin, it's even worse. It's like, well, the Doctor's a threat to my life now as a companion, so why am I sticking with him? And this kind of gives an ugly tone to a lot of it. Like, if you watch a classic scene from Tom Baker's era, like the finale of Genesis of the Daleks, where the Doctor's gone back to the incubator room, Sarah and Harry have fled to the main entrance of the bunker, where the Thals have set up explosives and they're ready to blow the bunker to entomb the bunker, and because the Thals have had their entire city massacred by the Daleks.
The entrance to the bunker is just beyond the next rise. That's where they must be heading.
And the Daleks have now returned to the bunker, so it's a case of, look, whilst they're in the bunker, bury them. And Betton's like, look, this is our only chance to defeat the Daleks. And Sarah and Harry begging, don't blow it yet, the Doctor's still in there. But Betton's like, look, she comes to the point, she says, look, I can't give you any more time. I've got to blow the bunker.
Fire! No, wait! He's coming! He's coming! No! And then, there's a bit where they're about to detonate, and Sarah's screaming, "No, he's coming! He's coming!" And it's like that. It's poignant. It's that kind of, it's like, she's so happy to see him alive, and she's saying, "Please don't, he's about to, just wait a bit longer. He's going to survive." And it's poignant because it speaks to the bond there is between the Doctor and Sarah. Whereas, if you had Perry in that scene, there is that uncomfortable air of, this guy's horrible to you. There's almost an air of desperation of why she would want him saved.
Get out! Why will you never cooperate?
Because I worry. It's my caring nature.
Something feels wrong there. And so I think that's the big difference. It makes it kind of seem needy, a bit of a drip, but also suggests almost that she's a psychological damage there that's never resolved. Because, again, the makers aren't even thinking of why would she still travel with the Doctor? And they've never really addressed that question. That's never answered. Why does Perry still travel with the Doctor? So that's a problem, I think. Now, my main issue with the strangulation, apart from the allusions you could draw to domestic violence, is if you think back, it kind of taints what came before in terms of, scenes where the Doctor risked his life for his companion, or indeed where the companion did everything to save him. Like if you watch, say, the opening episode of Planet of the Daleks, you see Joe there kind of nursing the Doctor as he's in this coma, and she's afraid he's going to die, and she's risks everything to seek help for him.
It's all right. Oh, Joe, now listen to me. I'm liable to sleep for quite some time.
Doctor, I don't know whether you can hear me or not. I'm going outside. I'm going to try and find some help.
There's something kind of taints it for me when you get the sense, if you even think for a minute, that the Doctor would have ever hurt Joe. In response, if there would ever been that side to the Doctor that was going to hurt Joe. And Twin Dilemma makes it retroactively the case that there is that side to the Doctor that would have. Which is really horrible. It feels like it gives a horrible taint to the, not just to the Twin Dilemma, but to a lot of the show itself. It's like you just wish they'd never gone there, really.
What absolute rubbish! You were almost young. I really liked you, and you were sweet.
Sweet? Effete? Sweet? Sweet?
Now, there are people, of course, who defend it and say, but look, the Doctor's mentally ill. And sometimes when people are mentally ill, they do act out of character and, can't necessarily be held responsible for their actions because they don't have capacity.
Change. What change? There is no change. No rhyme. No time. No place for space. Nothing. Nothing but the grinding engines of the universe. The crushing boredom of eternity.
But for me, the problems are twofold. Firstly, the Doctor does say, we all know the fate of alien spies when he's about to choke Perry. And it's like, there's never been that side to the Doctor that believed in enforcing some kind of crazy, creepy frontier law of just executing spies who are aliens and just kind of painting him as this paranoid weirdo. It's like, it's just not in the Doctor's nature to go on the aggressive like that. That's so, the worst thing is that sometimes the excuses some fans give suggest that it's like, sometimes I find it feels like fans have to kind of, crawl for excuses for why he strangled her. And the worst one is, maybe he felt she wasn't sufficiently grateful to him for sacrificing his life in case of Randazani, which, of course, is the big taint. It's like, Cage of Randazani was a heroic kind of, great heroic moment for the Doctor. It was kind of painted beautifully. Like, the pinnacle of it is, of course, basically he sacrificed his life to save Perry. Like, there's no one else he saves in that story but Perry. And he's only just met Perry. Like Perry only just became a companion in the previous story, and he's decided that he's going to sacrifice his life to save her life. Yeah, because they both got spectrox toxemia. By the end, he only has enough of the cure to give to one person, so he gives it to Perry and decides he'll take his chance on the regeneration.
Perry. Perry, can you hear me? Open your mouth. You must drink this. Is this death?
Doctor, what's happened?
Perry, I see Professor Jackage knew his stuff. Good old Jackage.
Jackage, you got the bat's milk?
Contains an antivesicant, I imagine. Interesting.
Where is it?
What?
The bat's milk.
Finished. Only enough for you.
There must be something I can do. Tell me.
Too late, Perry. Going soon. It's time to say goodbye.
Now, the really poignant bit, I think that sometimes people fans sometimes don't see, is that there's a perfect contrast to that with the face-off between Stotts and Crippler, where like, the whole mission for the mercenaries, Stotts and his gunrunners, has been that they're going to raid Sharajak's compound and get, their cut of Spectrox.
2 kilos, Stotts.
5.
It seems we're unable to reach an agreement. Try somewhere else for your Spectrox.
Come on, Jack. Be reasonable.
2 kilos is very reasonable.
You're sitting on tons of the stuff.
And I know what it fetches per ounce. That's why your threat to cut off my arms supply carries no weight. I can obtain weapons anywhere.
The boss isn't going to like this.
That is your problem, Stotts.
Okay, so where's the 2 kilos?
I'll bring it. Wait here.
But be quick. I've got to call the ship down before sunrise.
20 minutes.
Oh, you really screwed him down, eh? 2 kilos, what a deal!
Don't you try and get smart with me again, Crowper. One thing I do know. That Spectrox is stored somewhere within 10 minutes from here. Yeah, Crowper.
And by the end of it, so there's this wonderful build-up of they keep on, tempting each other, the bigger price, 2 kilos, 2 kilos. He just gave us 2 kilos. That's not enough. Let's raid him and get more kilos. And at the end, the mud baths have gone off. The war itself has intensified. Now Crippler's saying,
"We ain't going anywhere, except back to Major."
I paid you well for those trips. Now do as I say.
The way we see it, we already got 2 kilos. That's enough for us.
2 kilos. Jack's got tons of it stored away.
Yeah, well, we ain't getting our heads blown off by Jack's dummies or boiled in that mud. Not for 20 tons, we ain't.
You coward. Curs. What about you, Stotts? You staying here with this gutter trash?
Yeah, I'll go with you, Morgus. I have a few old scores to settle with Shara's Jack.
we're not going down there even for 20 kilos of the stuff. They're saying, no price will get me to risk my life to go down there. And all along, the Doctor is risking his life to go down there to save Perry, save one life. He's doing the noble thing whilst all these other characters are backstabbing each other for that kind of Spectrox. It's a beautiful kind of, contrast. But having it be the case that the Doctor is, would be so petty after having sacrificed his life to say, well, you didn't thank me enough, so I'm going to now strangle you. It just utterly taints that. It kind of turns the Doctor into such a far pettier, nastier character. And it makes the Doctor Who universe a far pettier, nastier place, and it really feels like point of Kate Vandazani was that the Doctor wasn't petty. He was in a petty universe, but he was a hero in a petty universe, at least in that story. And so it just feels horrible when it's like, well, we can't. What's there left to do if we can't defend what he did? Well, we'll just reach for dirt poor excuses. It's like it used to be the Doctor Who was a show you defended, as kind of, well, we see something in it, something good in it, and it's now kind of fans seem reduced to kind of, we're defending this because we just have to morally compromise because we're that much of a fan of Colin's Doctor that we'll justify him doing anything. How far will we go to defend this shite now? Like, for instance, like there's a scene in, like, there are stories where the Doctor is possessed in Pyramids of Mars and in The Invisible Enemy. And there is that sense of the Doctor, could he now present a harm to his companions? There's a beautiful moment in The Invisible Enemy where he's about to shoot Lily. He's been possessed by the virus, but he's like, internally you can hear his will kind of fighting, saying, I can't do it, I'm not going to do it. It's like, there's a beautiful sense of the Doctor's moral integrity winning out, or at least fighting.
Kill. I can't. I won't. You must.
Leela.
Doctor!
Leela. I can't stop it.
Got to fight it. Got to fight it.
And you don't get that sense at all in the Twin Dilemma. You just... And so, there's a lot of fans who say, well, Perry was annoying anyway. Just excusing what happened here, which is just... To me, in some ways, it belittles the Doctor to make excuses like that. Do you know what I mean? But then that's kind of reflective of how pathetic the Doctor's become in this era.
Do you like the new Doctor Who?
No, I don't think he plays the part very well at all. The Doctors nowadays, I think, are getting too young for the part they're playing.
What do you think about his assistant?
His assistant? Oh, she whines.
Her accent get me. She seems to be whining non-stop all the time, and I personally don't think she suits the part at all.
I mean, I did talk about the misanthropy of the era, but it's like it's a kind of its own, almost an aimless misanthropy, a kind of flip-flopping misanthropy for its own sake. Because, in Warriors of the Deep, the Doctor's having a go at the humans and saying, why don't you have more compassion for the Silurians who are trying to massacre you? You humans are so heartless and lack compassion and all this, you should be as bleeding-hearted as I am.
I sometimes wonder why I like the people of this miserable planet so much.
And then in Twin Dilemma, he's like, you humans, you're too compassionate about things. You've got, I don't concern myself with, compassions. I'm an alien.
Did you have to be so rude?
To whom?
Hugo. You could at least have said goodbye. Are you having another of your fits?
You may not believe this, but I have fully stabilized.
Then I suggest you take a crash course in manners.
You seem to forget, Perry. I'm not only from another culture, but another planet. I am, in your terms, an alien. I am therefore bound to have different values and customs.
Your former self was polite enough.
At such a cost. I was on the verge of becoming neurotic.
We all have to repress our feelings from time to time. I suggest you get back into the habit.
And I would suggest, Perry, that you wait a little before criticizing my new persona. You may well find it isn't quite as disagreeable as you think.
Well, I hope so.
And, you humans are pathetic for concerning yourself with compassion. It's like it flip-flops. It can't... Like, it's a misanthropy that can't even make its mind up about humanity, other than finding some way to scorn and find some ways for the Doctor to go on a arrogant rant to start a kind of drama scene. And I think that's the other problem with the Twin Dilemma, is the entire premise of it is the Doctor has gone into exile. it's kind of the first of its kind, where the Doctor, self-imposed exile. It's kind of the first of its kind, and it ends up being a recurring theme during the Moffat era, of course. There's a long period where the Doctor, every so often, the Matt Smith's Doctor says, "Oh, I got too big. I need to go retreat into the shadows again."
So you're going to do this? Let them all think you're dead?
It's the only way, then they can all forget me. I got too big, Dorian. Too noisy. Time to step back into the shadows.
Need to convince the universe I'm dead, so I'm going to retire. It's what happens at the end of Wedding of River Song. And then, of course, after Amy and Rory die, Amy and Rory he loses Amy and Rory to the Weeping Angels. That's when he goes to recluse again during the Snowmen.
Hello?
What do you want from him?
Help.
Why?
Danger.
Why would he help you?
Kindness.
The Doctor is not kind.
He decides, I'm not answering the universe's call anymore. The universe doesn't care, why should I, kind of thing.
He was different once. A long time ago. Kind, yes. A hero, even. A savior of worlds. But he suffered losses which hurt him. Now he prefers isolation to the possibility of pain's return.
And then, of course, in kind of because of recurring, it happens again, of course, in Bells of St. John, where he's retired to a monastery to study the picture of Clara.
Hello?
Ah, hello. I can't find the internet.
Sorry?
It's gone. The internet. Can't find it anywhere. Where is it?
The internet?
Yes, the internet. Why don't I have the internet?
It's 12:07.
I got 3:30. Am I phoning a different time zone?
Yeah, you really sort of are.
And then he kind of devotes himself to looking after the town of Christmas. Decides this is where he's going to retire and resign himself to the end, really. Then it happens again in The Magician's Apprentice.
According to you, this is where the Doctor is.
Okay, how do we find him? How do we know what we're looking for?
Anachronisms. The slightest, tiniest. Anachronisms.
Clara finds him on that tank, with a guitar playing to the crowds, and such a stupid scene. And that was the point where I was thinking, okay, look, this whole trope of the Doctor going into, medieval exile recluse again, it's just, I don't buy it anymore. He's overdone it to the point where, the Moffat has overdone this to the point where I just don't care anymore. I don't believe it anymore. And it just seems to be an excuse to, just a stall. It just seems to be an excuse for padding, really. Just get on with the adventure. Get on with what we want to happen. But for me, the problem with Twin Dilemma is this, that it doesn't even feel like, when Moffat does that, however, there is at least a sense of that there's something tragic about the Doctor going to recluse. There's something like the universe. It's a great loss to the universe. The universe needs the Doctor to come out of that recluse and start saving the day again. There'd be terrible consequences to the universe without the Doctor.
Now he's dying in London with us.
It is done. It is done.
dear goddess.
What's wrong?
A universe without the Doctor. There will be consequences. Jenny, with me.
What are you scanning for?
Local star systems.
Why?
Because they're disappearing.
Disappearing how?
The Doctor's timeline has been corrupted. With every victory reversed. Think how many lives that man saved, how many worlds.
That's never the case in the Twin Dilemma. And in fact, I don't think it's really the case in much of Davison's era. I think by this point they've made the Doctor such a failure that it feels like the universe could quite happily get along without the Doctor. You know, he doesn't make things at all better. He hasn't made things better in a long while. He's just been... If you watch Warriors of the Deep and Resurrection of the Daleks, you think, yeah, the Doctor's a loser these days. He's a failure. Or, you know, or Terminus, you feel like, you know, the Doctor's doesn't make any difference at all. He's a failure.
You are soft, like all Time Lords. You prefer to stand and watch. Action requires courage. Something you lack.
Why should we... You know, so basically, much of Twin Dilemma spends thinking, why should I care if the Doctor's gone into recluse? Into, you know, self-imposed exile. The only thing I care about is, of course, that it sucks for Perry. So all the drama about it kind of just falls flat, and it needn't have done. Like, I think if you did a story like that during Tom Baker's era, then yes, you would have got that sense of, you know, that the universe needs the Doctor to kind of come out of retirement and be the hero. It's like, can he afford to go into retirement? I don't think he can.
You're caught in the corridor of eternity.
Release me, insect, or I shall destroy the cosmos!
You're 1,000 years beyond the 20th century now, Sutek. Go on for another 10,000.
I'll spare the planet Earth! I'll give it you as a plaything! Release me!
No, Sutek. The time of the Osirans is long past. You lived about 7,000 years.
He's dead. Sutek is dead.
At last.
But with Twin Dilemma, it's like, don't care. What difference would it make? They've kind of made the Doctor such a failure that he can do something like that, and I don't care.
The Doctor is dangerous!
Of course it's dangerous! We could be blown to pieces at any minute!
But no one could have lived through this!
Then stay behind! This is work for heroes, not for faint-hearted girls!
There is also an element of chauvinism, I think, to the story. And I think in some ways this is kind of what feminists get angry about with the classic series. Well, certainly with the Jane era, this feeling that even when the Doctor's this repulsive and this incompetent, the show still kind of leans on the idea that he's right and that Perry's role is to defer and to just follow along. And it's like it's the whole... It's a patriarchal mind. It feels like it is a truly patriarchal mindset of... It's not meritocracy that makes the Doctor great. It's just, he's the man. He's the male lead. And we have to kind of... Even when he's as compromised as this, we have to keep him the male lead. And we have to keep the female companion subordinate. And this is kind of, you know, this is a mark of how much the show had regressed since 5 years ago, when we had companions like Romana or Leela who were quite capable of being the hero, or Sarah Jane, who were quite capable of being a hero, a leading hero in their own right in the story. I mean, and there's parts of the Sunmakers where Leela, you know, takes charge and becomes the hero of the story, and she actually becomes the protagonist. It becomes her story, essentially, in the Sunmakers. Same with Romana in Horns of Nymon. And Sarah Jane Smith, obviously, she has her great heroic moments. Some great kick-ass moments. But that's been regressed now. It's like, in 5 years, that's completely regressed, and Doctor Who's kind of become it used to defy its critics. Now it vindicates them tenfold. You know, it's regressed basically. And it's no longer the case of, well, the companion defers because they like the Doctor because he's wise. In this story, they defer to the Doctor because he's the male lead. And, he's not wise. He's not pleasant. He's not a hero. But, tradition dictates female companion defers to him anyway. And doesn't get ideas above a station.
And I would suggest, Perry, that you wait a little before criticising my new persona. You may well find it isn't quite as disagreeable as you think.
Well, I hope so.
Whatever else happens, I am the Doctor, whether you like it or not.
And I think it did taint Colin's era ever since. I mean, there's a lot of kind of discussion about the violent scenes in Attack of the Cybermen, Vengeance on Varos, the two Doctors, where the Doctor ends up in a mortal struggle for his life and he ends up killing various henchmen on Varos, various Cybermen, and of course Shockeye in the two Doctors.
I know how near you are.
You're just desserts.
Now, a lot of fans found these scenes very controversial and found these scenes to be kind of... I remember one fan even said that the scene where the Doctor kills Shockeye is the death of Doctor Who for them. Now, I think you can argue back and forth about whether these scenes do show the Doctor... can you justify what the Doctor does here? Because, and usually fans would say, well, it's clear self-defense. Shockeye was hunting him down. It was kill or be killed for the Doctor. So surely, surely the Doctor deserves the kind of, the benefit of the, self-defense clause. And it's not the first time the Doctor's done something like this. So is it unfair to target Colin for this? But then I think that's the problem. I think this Doctor has from the get-go lost the confidence of a lot of fans who aren't prepared to make the same allowances for him as they did for other Doctors, because their trust in him has been shattered by what happened in the Twin Dilemma. And to a degree, that's why I think it's a bit silly for fans to say, well, are you prejudging Colin? Are you biased against Colin? Well, the show went out of its way to bias us against Colin with the Twin Dilemma, and now you're complaining that that's the reaction you got. From fans, that the show deliberately sought that. It's ridiculous, really. So there's the Shockeye thing. I think it's the problem. I think with the Shockeye scene is the line "You're just desserts" that the Doctor says. You're just desserts. It feels like it's like it feels like he's it feels like a callous line, but also I think it undermines the idea that the Doctor was in a mortal struggle there. It feels like he's gloating. It undermines the sense that he was in a fight for his life there. Really. Then, of course, there's Vengeance of Varos. There's the acid bath scene. Now, the big problem with that acid bath scene is...
the most... forgive me if I don't join you.
The entire scuffle happens because the Doctor, for some reason, whilst the guards are busy, dumping bodies into the acid bath, the Doctor decides to approach them and tap one of them on the shoulder when he could have just snuck away up this ladder beside him. So it's like, what was the lead for him to get into that scuffle in the first place that saw him, as it happens, have to fight for his life against two guards? It looks almost too contrived to be accidental, if you know what I mean. Because of the way it's set up. And then, of course, there's the attack of the Cybermen, which, normally it's no big thing if the Doctor kind of just if the Doctor shoots Cybermen. Cybermen are, they're unreasonable killers. You've got to go for your gun and shoot to a degree. It's kill or be killed, or even kill or be converted to them. And you can argue, are they even really alive anymore? Because they're Cybermen.
Please, Doctor. Kill me.
Move away from him, Doctor. Emotion is a weakness.
I don't think so.
It brought you back for your friend, and it will cost you your life.
And moreover, if you watch the scene where he's in the final fight with a cyber leader, it does feel like it's been staged so that you just know that the actor playing the Cybermen is just... he's never quite going to get the Doctor. It's all been staged so that the Doctor's going to shoot at just the right moment before he gets him. So again, it doesn't feel like he's in mortal danger. Whereas, say, in Earthshock, it did feel like the Doctor was in mortal danger there. But even beyond that, it's the whole thing of people have stopped making allowances for the Doctor. They've stopped trusting the Doctor is willing to do, knows when it's, has the moral distinction to know when violence is necessary and when it's not. You don't get the sense he's a wise choice about, when he has to employ lethal tactics. Because of Twin Dilemma. Because Twin Dilemma has destroyed so much of our confidence in him. And because, he's been so beefy to Perry. I mean, usually when Tom's Doctor, like in season 13, like Tom's Doctor is particularly ruthless. He's particularly ruthless in Terror of the Zygons. He's particularly ruthless in The Brain of Morbius. He's particularly ruthless in Pyramids of Mars.
He was so concerned about his brother.
Well, I told him not to be. Told him it was too late.
Oh, sometimes you don't seem...
Human? Typical of Siren simplicity.
A man has just been murdered!
4 men, Sarah. 5, if you include Professor Scarman himself. And they're merely the first of millions, unless Sutek is stopped. Know thine enemy. Admirable advice.
Yes.
You get the sense, though, that he's always motivated by the desire to protect the innocent. It's kind of, he has a chivalrous desire. He has that kind of very chivalrous character with Sarah. He's always protective of Sarah. He's very chivalrous. And it's his kind of desire to protect Sarah that kind of speaks to his desire to protect humanity as a whole. So it feels like when the Doctor does things like this, it's because of who he's protecting.
I could rule the universe with this, Chancellor.
Is that what you want? Destroy that gun. Destroy all knowledge of it. To throw us back to the darkest age.
No, Chancellor. Forward!
Like, he's doing it more out of protection of the people he cares about than a spite against the enemy. But because Colin is so unpleasant to Perry, and because he's so misanthropic, the Sixth Doctor is so unpleasant to Perry and so misanthropic, it does feel again like... It does feel like, well, all you see is the spite. You don't see the same kind of noble intention behind it. You don't feel it instinctively. You just see him just being unpleasant. So it becomes all about and because it becomes about the details of, did he have to do it that way? Did he not? It makes you look at the scene a lot more critically. And because of that, the scenes in the show start to fall apart a lot more. It starts to seem staged and contrived in a way that you dwell on. And when you do that, when you question the fiction that much, the suspension of disbelief starts to collapse. And in any case, even if it were true the Doctors, did it in self-defense, doesn't... It just proves that the Doctor's a hypocrite, because he spent most of Warriors of the Deep complaining at the humans who were also fighting the Solarians in self-defense.
I sometimes wonder why I like the people of this miserable planet so much.
So it's like, yeah, the guy's a hypocrite. You can't, if the humans can't use that resort, then without you ranting at them, why can't, you haven't got a leg to stand on. So the question is, what implications did that have for the show's popularity? For the show's ratings, shall we say? Well, the Twin Dilemma did experience something of a dip in the ratings, but not as but it did experience something of a dip in the ratings. Part 1 got 7.6 million, Part 2 7.4 million, Part 3 7.0, and Part 4 6.3 million. So, as you can see, it did decline as it went on for the Twin Dilemma. But for the following season, Attack of the Cybermen, the ratings for Attack of the Cybermen were... Bear in mind, Attack of the Cybermen was done in 2 parts. Part 1 got 8.9 million, and Part 2 got 7.2 million. And fans tend to make a bigger deal of that drop-off than they do with the Twin Dilemma. But 8.9 million is obviously far higher than Twin Dilemma got. By the end of the season, Revelation of the Daleks, the ratings were 7.4 million for Part 1 of Revelation of the Daleks and 7.7 million for Part 2. So again, the ratings haven't been drastically falling during Colin Baker's first season, after the Twin Dilemma. The ratings troubles only really begin during Trial of a Time Lord. Let's see. Part 1 got 4.9 million, Part 2 got 4.9 million, Part 3 got 3.9 million, and Part 4 got 3.7 million. So, all that considered, the Twin Dilemma didn't quite alienate viewers in the way we might think it would. So why didn't it? So why did viewers keep watching? So why didn't the Twin Dilemma cause the immediate drop of viewership you would expect or imagine? Why didn't the Twin Dilemma do quite the damage you would expect, or certainly the notable immediate damage that you would expect? Why didn't it do that? Well, I think because as fans, we still just couldn't resist the adventure of the show.
What are we doing here, anyway?
Looking for George Stevenson.
We couldn't resist the escapism of the show. We couldn't resist the question of what happens next. Where does the show go next? Was the adventure going to take us next? Was the show going to go next? You know, the thrills, the danger, it was still there, and we were still kind of hooked, and we were still invested in this expanding universe of the show.
I don't know, some sort of machinery!
Even the Twin Dilemma couldn't put us off. I mean, probably for many of us, even the Twin Dilemma couldn't put us off. Even the Doctor being presented in this horrible way could not put us off. I mean, it was an acid test. The Twin Dilemma was kind of an acid test of our loyalty. Many fans stuck with the show regardless. And certainly it wasn't enough to make us give up immediately and say, well, you know, I'm done. And in that sense, it didn't spell the death of the show. But I think nonetheless a lot of fan anger at the Twin Dilemma, you know, a lot of frustration at the Twin Dilemma stems from that issue. That issue of, we were loyal fans. We would have watched the show regardless. So what was the need to do this? You know, what was the need to, if we were in for the ride already, why put this in there? Why do we have to endure this as part of the ride? Part of the journey? We didn't need to. We would have watched the show anyway, regardless. What was the need to do this? And I think even for fans who like the idea of the Sixth Doctor being a slightly more amoral Doctor, slightly less of a Lily White Doctor, you know, people like the idea of it. I think even fans who like the idea of the Sixth Doctor being a slightly more amoral Doctor, a slightly less Lily White Doctor, you know, like the idea that, you know, like the idea that if he's a bit more of a shady character, then a bit more of a real character, and the show has a bit more of a real feel to it.
My main force of Daleks is well hidden.
Watchdog! Watchdog!
Hold! Stay where you are! Do not move!
I think even fans who like the idea that the Doctor was going that way would say they wish he hadn't started that way. Wish it hadn't been done this way. You know, because Twin Dilemma did feel very forced. Forced and unpleasant. Unpleasantly forced.
And that's what you are. Thoroughly evil.
I think that's a problem. A lot of fans feel that, look, we were on board for this. You know, we already liked the idea of following the show and seeing where it would go. So why did it have to go here? You know, we would have watched the show regardless. What was the need to do this? And we just wish it hadn't been done this way.
Doctor, stop it!
No, not even a fairy, an alien spy! Sent here to spy on me! Well, we all know the fate of alien spies!
You know, it's very much a fly in the ointment kind of story. And there were several of those in the 1980s. Those stories where you feel like if only they hadn't done this, then it would elevate the era so much. You know, it wouldn't have tainted the era if, you know, if having this story tainted the era in a way that, you know, if they hadn't done this story, the era wouldn't feel half as tainted. Particularly because of the focus in the 1980s on making this, kind of creating the idea that this is a show, this wasn't standalone stories anymore, but a show in a state of continuity, continuation, and emotional continuation, where every episode would call back to the last or blur into the next. And where it felt there was a kind of a sense of linear continuity to it all. You know, where we were getting a lot of cumbersome, redundant sequels to old stories. Create this idea that this was a show in a state of continuation, constant continuation. Which to me was part of the problem. I feel like it was suddenly, it felt like the Doctor was now having to struggle to defeat enemies that he really had already defeated long ago, and really should have just been left resolved.
You escaped from Zarephath. Oh, my dear Doctor, you have been naive.
The idea, of course, that to create this kind of continuity, you get people watching, get people to care about what's happening next, because there's the feeling what came before and what came after matters. The idea, of course, was that the Twin Dilemma would be a way to create that sense of continuity, emotional continuity again. Where the Doctor is going to start this way, it's going to have emotional repercussions, it's going to have implications. There's going to be a process whereby he evolves from this point.
No.
Well, don't you like it? It's not a bad likeness.
This is dreadful.
Is it?
This is the Garden of Fond Memories. I've somehow managed to arrive after my own death.
Well, it's not possible.
In the TARDIS it is. This statue is here, of me as I am now. I shall never again regenerate.
Well, the statue's a joke. Someone's having you on.
No. I've arrived in my own future. And I'm dead.
Can't be.
Look at it this way. If I were to take you back to Earth, after you had died, it would be possible for you to see your own gravestone.
Well, it's a gag.
Gag? Gag? Do you realise how much a thing like that would cost? Far too much for someone to play fun and games. I thought I was good for a few more regenerations.
Well, if you're gonna die here, well, what's gonna happen to me? Well, I can't fly the TARDIS, I'd be stuck here. Unless there's a statue of me here somewhere.
That was the idea. But, like I said, you're lucky if the show was lucky to not alienate viewers, and rather to saying, I don't care what's ahead next. I've been left with such a bad impression of this Doctor, I don't want to watch him anymore. The Doctor is no longer a family hero that I feel comfortable inviting into my living room anymore. They got it wrong. A lot of the fan complaints come down to the feeling the impression that their impressionability to the show was taken advantage of here, abused and taken advantage of here, and I feel it too. The feeling of that because we were guaranteed to watch anything with the Doctor in it, it felt almost like the show felt it could abuse us and say, you know what, it's and treat us like crap, really, and say, we're going to ruin the very thing you love about the show, about the Doctor, and there's nothing you can do about it because I'm in charge. It was an act of supreme arrogance, and that's really the problem with the 80s. It's also kind of, the curse of the 80s, because to produce a show like that in the trying circumstances it was under in the 80s, to make it, to pull it off at all, you had to have, to make it, to pull it off at all, you had to have something of a thick skin, and to a degree you had to have something of a big ego. It's kind of what you needed. But, it had its pitfalls, because it meant that the show would do works of extreme arrogance, like the Twin Dilemma, and the makers would act immune to criticism completely, and do stuff that just seemed completely misguided and completely against all common sense. And, very much played against what Colin Baker himself is really like. You know, if you meet Colin at a convention, if you see him around the cast of the show, you know that he's very, very gallant man. He's very loyal friend to the cast, and you know he's the complete opposite of what we're presented with in the Twin Dilemma. This, you know, in that he's presented as a backstabbing, hostile, unpleasant, nasty man-child. You know, chauvinistic dick as well. But, you know, Colin in real life is the complete opposite of that. And it's like they've written him against his talents and his winning nature. You know, his winning charm. But the thing is, Colin was keen on the idea of making the Doctor a bit inaccessible and a bit obnoxious. You know, Colin, back when he was interviewed, he said that it was a deliberate decision and a very brave one to leave audiences feeling that the Doctor was a bit inaccessible and feeling, I'm not sure I like this Doctor. But, you know, as John Pertwee said in Planet of the Daleks,
there's a considerable difference between courage and reckless stupidity, you know.
And John Nathan Turner sometimes couldn't tell the difference. He really couldn't.
Ta-da!
Yup.
Of course, the big talk that's often the case is, you know, why did they make Twin Dilemma the season finale? What was the end game here? You know, why did John Nathan Turner decide that, you know, people had to have a first impression of the Doctor that soon? And at the same time conspired to make that first impression as unpleasant and horrible and hostile as possible. You know, it seems like the stupidest idea ever to make that your season finale. It was, I suppose, going for uncertainty, the whole thing of, you know, stay tuned because, you know, we're entering the unknown now, where you don't even know the Doctor anymore, kind of thing. But anyway, the bottom line for me is, I don't know if I can really conclude that the Twin Dilemma killed the show. But I don't think it helped. Or rather, if Twin Dilemma didn't kill the show, then I think it failed to do so in spite of its content rather than because of it. Like, if the show survived, it was in spite of the Twin Dilemma, not because of it. A lot of things killed the show. The ratings don't really bear out that Twin Dilemma was it, but it's like, it's that feeling that the show shouldn't have had to survive the Twin Dilemma. It shouldn't have needed to survive Twin Dilemma in the first place. It was a stupid idea. It was a stupid idea that came about because of the whole thing of, you know, John Nathan Turner wanting to go for something sensational to get the show talked about in the papers. Which does suggest that, you know, Tom Baker had gone, the past was fading away, and time was against the show. In a sense, Twin Dilemma was a symptom, I suppose, of the show being in a kind of, being less popular rather than the cause of it. I mean, like I said, I don't think Twin Dilemma to me is not the Jump the Shark story. It's more one of several final straws. With a show that for a long time seemed to have lost its heart and lost its soul. And the Twin Dilemma, yeah, where suddenly it feels like no one cares. The show has a kind of sociopathic tone to it now. It's had that feel possibly since Logopolis, possibly since Time Flight, you know, the reaction to Adric's death. Definitely since Terminus. Definitely since the likes of Warriors of the Deep and Resurrection of the Daleks. And the Twin Dilemma is just epitomizes that. It's kind of got that mean tone of sneering at humanity, sneering at Perry, sneering at her weakness. Just feel like it's become a very, very nasty show. Yeah, there's a reason why this is a period that I think for a long time fans wanted to forget. But, you know, new generation of fans came in the noughties who were probably a bit more inclined to, you know, they were kind of a bit more of an edgy generation. They're probably kind of more inclined to appreciate the edgier side of Colin's Doctor. Like, he was the kind of the edgelord Doctor. You know what I mean? Tom Baker was a bit of an edgelord, but Colin was even more explicitly the edgelord. So unexpectedly, Colin became rediscovered, and also because of Big Finish doing some good work with him. But, you know, because of the way that Colin's era ended unceremoniously with Trial of a Time Lord and with him being sacked, you know, off behind the scenes, and didn't even get a proper regeneration scene. It's the wasted potential that most gets to me. Of, you know, let's take a promising new Doctor and make him and alienated many viewers to him as possible right from the get-go. And the same way it felt like, you know, Davison was, you know, it's like wasted potential with both Davison and Colin. Wasted handling of those could have been great Doctors. Such a shame, really. I mean, Twin Dilemma is such a headache. Apart from anything else, it's such a bloody headache. So yeah, they did nearly everything wrong in this era, and even when they briefly got it right, it wouldn't make a difference. It wouldn't turn things around. Nothing could turn it around from the decline it was on. It could produce a jewel out of the decline, a diamond in the rough, but that's all. I mean, it's not so much that the show was never good again after the Twin Dilemma. It certainly never produced anything as bad as the Twin Dilemma again, but it could never produce anything good enough to wipe away that blemish of the Twin Dilemma. Nothing was good enough to wipe away that blemish. And arguably, you could say nothing ever could be. That blemish, that bad first impression, has followed Colin Baker around. Has followed his Doctor around for years. I mean, even if you listen, you know, even when it comes to the Big Finish audios, when it comes to his best ones, even in his best audios, there is still that sense that he is struggling uphill. There is still that sense of him still struggling uphill against that bad first impression. And he can overcome it for a while. But that bad first impression is always close behind. You can never really escape it. You can never really get away from it. It'll never go away, really. It will somehow can never be scrubbed away. Even 40 years on. Yeah, the best Big Finish audios with Colin just leave you pining for what could have been if only this had been square one for him rather than the square one we got. which is really testament to how much damage even 5 seconds out of 90 minutes of really bad, really mean-spirited Doctor Who can do. And all because John Nathan Turner thought that a daft, cheap publicity stunt shock tactic like this was worth doing. And it's a damn shame because, the show should have had the show is capable of a quality that could have spoken for itself.
What was it you always told me, Doctor? Braveheart?
You must survive. Too many of your enemies would delight in your death, Doctor.
Braveheart?
You're needed. You mustn't die, Doctor.
Many of your enemies would delight in your death, Doctor.
You know
You're
that.
needed. You mustn't die, Doctor.
You know that, Doctor.
Adric?
You're needed.
You know that.
You mustn't die, Doctor.
No, my dear Doctor, you must die. Die, Doctor. Die, Doctor.
Anyway, I will have a few more Doctor Who videos coming out. I've decided I want to return a bit to the topic of Doctor Who, but beyond that, stay tuned for some more of that. For now, this is Sadako24 signing out.